All right, greetings everybody, and thanks very much for joining us for our 8th edition of the Lunch with Lakers. My name is Ryan Palm. I work in the alumni office at Mercyhurst, and I want to take a little bit of time to go through some housekeeping things before we introduce today's guest. If you haven't joined us before, Lunch with Lakers is a weekly series that we do to try and introduce you to the latest, greatest happenings at Mercyhurst. As the COVID-19 coronavirus situation came about, we thought it was a great way to connect virtually, to connect with our alumni, students, employees, staff, and parents around the country, and share just a little dose of Mercyhurst with you each week. We took a couple weeks off for the Memorial Day holiday and some well-deserved staff vacation time at the end of the year, but we're back and we plan on continuing our series for at least the next month or two, and then we'll see how the participation is after that and go from there. We have a chat function as part of this series. If you've never used Zoom before, somewhere on your screen there'll be an option to open a chat feature. Lindsay Frank from our alumni team is manning the chat room. She'll be posting updates, some reminders, and some different things there. The chat is also the location where you can send in questions for our guest. We will do our best to get to questions throughout the show and the end. But if for some reason you send in your question and we don't get to it, Bryan, our guest, has kindly agreed to answer those questions after the fact. So we'll be sure to follow up via email if we don't get to it during today's episode. Lindsay has just pasted in a link where you can go and watch previous recordings of our Lunch with Lakers, as well as keep an eye on future recordings that will be posted there. So be sure to bookmark that page. If you haven't already, I encourage you to follow us on social media. We also post updates there as to future participants as well. You can also always email us at alumni@mercyhurst.edu with questions, concerns. If you have suggestions on topics you would like us to cover, we would love to have that feedback and would be glad to try and make those topics happen. We try to have a variety of topics, not all focused in one area, not all employees, not all faculty. So if there's something that you think we're missing, please feel free to reach out and let us know either via the chat room or via email, alumni@mercyhurst.edu. I think that pretty much covers our housekeeping items for today. So I want to go ahead and introduce our guest. Bryan Colvin is joining us. Bryan is one of my favorite people at Mercyhurst, working in one of my favorite places at Mercyhurst, which is our archives. Anybody who's passionate about Mercyhurst is probably also passionate about the school's history, and Bryan is really our caretaker and leader in that regard, and that's why we're excited to have that conversation with him today. Bryan, I believe, came to Mercyhurst in 2018, but I will turn it over to him to let him tell us a little bit about how he got involved with archives in the first place as a career, and then how you found yourself to Mercyhurst. Thanks again, Bryan, for joining us. Why don't you get us started with some background?
Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me. So I studied history and political science as an undergrad, and then I went to grad school for history with all intentions of getting my PhD in history. But shortly after taking some classes in my master's degree, I took an archives course, and I just absolutely loved it. I love the ability to combine technology with history and putting it together and making it accessible to people. My professor, Dr. Janine Mazzacani, sat me down and said, I really had an aptitude for this, and maybe I should think about doing archives as a career instead of going on for my PhD. So I applied to the University of Pittsburgh, and I went on there the next year to get a master's in library and information science. And after that, I did several project jobs, one for the University of Pittsburgh on the Earl Gardner collection, who was a jazz musician, and another one for his assistant, and then at St. Vincent College on the Coverlit collection. And then after my third project job, I was like, I kind of want something more permanent. So I started looking around. I knew I wanted to work in higher ed. So the Mercyhurst job come up. It was close to home, so I'll apply, check it out. And on campus, I just fell in love with the campus. I came in February of 2018, started in May of 2018. You were there for my interview. It was a wonderful process, and I really liked everybody. So that's why I decided to take the job.
Well, that's awesome, and I'm glad the February weather in Erie, PA didn't scare you away from wanting to spend some time with us. And now you've lived through a couple summers, so you get to see the best and brightest that Erie has.
The summers are wonderful.
Right, absolutely. So Mercyhurst, like most higher education institutions, went fully remote a few weeks back, a couple months back now. Time has flown. And that really altered everybody's work life, whether you're a student, the president, or anybody in between. Can you tell us a little bit about how working from your home has impacted your work in the archives?
So yeah, the workload has not really changed at all, but my everyday activities have. So the way I look at it, there are two main pillars in the archival profession. There's the physical documents, which are housed in the archives, and then there's the digital documents. So instead of splitting my time between the two, I've been focusing more on the digital. As of right now, we have over 12,000 digital files that's my students, volunteers, and I have scanned over the last 2 years, so which has allowed me to continue working from home and doing reference requests in certain projects. I've also, some of the projects has been search optimization, so I want to tag all the documents and pictures so it's easier to find stuff when you're looking for, say, a photo of Mother Borgia from 1930. Well, then well, boom, it's there. Also been going through PDFs and applying optical character recognition, so it's easier to search through them. We've done that with the Mercy ads and some other things, and it really makes searching much easier. And I'm currently working from home. I went in to do a project for the sisters that I had to go into the archives for last month, and I grabbed all the videos, and I'm currently digitizing them. So that's going to take me about 3 months. I come across amazing commercials the other day. So it's been very interesting.
Well, that's just also fascinating, and I'm going to try my hardest not to geek out and ask too many questions that probably lots of people don't care about. So I'm going to try and stick to the script, and I'll bug you for more information on all those things afterwards.
Sure.
So you've been here a couple of years now at Mercyhurst. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the changes that you've implemented in the archives, and maybe more so than anything in the technology that is used now?
So since starting in 2018, my goal for the archives has been to make it more accessible. The archives has a huge range of information. It's really rich with the history of the university, but it wasn't up to the current archival standards, and modern technology really wasn't thought of. So the first thing I did was I purchased a state-of-the-art scanner with a high image resolution, so we could go through and start scanning documents and images that are of perfect quality. And as you zoom into them, you don't lose any of the pixels. You don't have pixelation. And then I picked files that needed to be scanned that I thought would be used for reference. We also created a website for the front face of the archives, and it includes images and stories about the collections, and a Mercyhurst timeline that is still a work in progress, but it's also on the website. And you can access the database archive space. And if you go into archive space, you can read the Mercy ad, magazines, newsletters, yearbooks, and a lot more, and hopefully more to come every month.
That's really good. And I can certainly tell you our office in particular has benefited from that, the technology and the open availability of those materials. And it's also a lot of fun things we have planned in the works. So that's very exciting. So something that might be unique about the Mercyhurst archives compared with others is that Mercyhurst is also the home to the Tom and Michelle Ridge collection, which is their archival documents from a good portion of Governor Ridge's time in public office. Not everything, but quite a few things, obviously. Can you talk a little bit about that collection, what that's been like, gaining access to that, and maybe some of the interesting things you've been doing with it the past couple of years?
Yeah. So yes, it is unique that I'm also not only the university archivist, but I'm also Tom and Michelle Ridge's archivist. The Ridge collection is comprised of approximately 1,125,000 pages, 3,000 audiovisual items, 10,000 photographs, and 1,500 artifacts. So about a third of the collection had already been pretty organized, but over my time, I've been trying to organize it to where you can easily find one of the 1 million documents. It's also been great that I've been able to develop a relationship with both Governor Ridge and Mrs. Ridge and his chief of staff, Mark Holman, which has become a wonderfully added value, not only to me, but to the archives itself, because most of the time you don't get to know the people that you're archiving. and it's been really great. We've also had the pleasure to showcase the collection on the main floor of Hammermill Library. The exhibits show different times in Tom and Michelle Ridge's public service. The exhibits were designed in coordination with marketing, Dion Veach, Jeremy Hewitt, along with myself and two of my students, Shannon Gotham and Molly Kennedy. And it was a wonderful learning experience for them, and it's something I'm very proud of.
That's really neat. Thanks for sharing. So you touched briefly there on student involvement, which I think is really a hallmark of what we try to do here at Mercyhurst with a hands-on education where our students are encouraged, maybe sometimes forced, but usually encouraged to get involved at all steps of the way to further their education and have that experience. Can you talk a little bit more about student involvement, maybe with the university archives as well?
Yeah, so when I started the position, I really didn't expect that I would have that much contact with students. However, it's become one of my favorite parts of the jobs. Mentoring and teaching and getting to know the students and getting them excited about history has become really a passion of mine, and I'm very glad that that's part of the job. I currently have about 5 student employees working. They work on collection processing, any requests that come in, and scanning. They don't work on scanning happily, but they do it. It's quite a process and time consuming. We also work on other history projects, like we're working on the Heritage Room right now with the sisters. So we're gathering information and stuff for that as we prepare. We're a little bit behind because of COVID, but we're still moving forward. I've had 3 senior public history projects, the most recent being Rachel Wilson, which involved the digitization and display of negatives. It was going to be a website, but because of COVID, it kind of got changed into something else, but eventually it will come up. And I also have interns that work for both the university and Ridge Collection. The most recent Ridge intern helped with exhibit and collection organization, and a special shout out to them, Steve Meridian and Hannah Piper.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. So I'm gonna go off script for a second. You've now mentioned the Sisters of Mercy twice in your responses. Can you maybe talk a little bit about your interactions with the sisters? I can only assume that's kind of been an added bonus that maybe you weren't expecting to do much of when you came on board.
Yeah, I absolutely was not thinking that I would have much interaction with the sisters, but it's been absolutely wonderful going to the Mother House and being able to talk to them and working directly with some of the projects that they are wanting for their history and their legacy on campus. It's been absolutely a wonderful experience, and I'm very glad that I've been able to be a part. Especially Sister Lisa Mary and I have been working a lot together, and it's been a wonderful added value.
Well, that's wonderful. They're incredible people who have obviously literally built this place from the ground, and so I'm really happy that they're being able to interact with you and help record and share some of that key history for us. So a quick reminder to anybody out there listening, if you have a question for Bryan, please feel free to send that in through the chat function. We'd love to take any questions that you might have out there and try and throw him off his game and stump him a little bit. So Bryan, it was hard for me not to make this the first question and the only question, but can you tell us about some of the favorite treasures that you found in the archive in your time here at Mercyhurst so far? Yeah,
so one of my favorite things that I found so far is the buildings of as the campus is being built in 1925 and 1926, there's an old photo of 38th Street looking at 38th Street down into Erie, and one looking onto where campus is being built, the old farm. And it shows some old cars. I'm a huge fan of cars, so I like looking at the old cars, and it was really something I was very excited to find. Another thing has been the scrapbooks that were created by the sisters and students in the 20s through the 1980s. They have been a wealth of information. I've scanned some of them along with one of my, it was a public history project that I helped him with. So it's available, they're searchable. There's some very, very cool things on there. Like I was able to find, I was sitting in Andrea Barnett's office one day, and I went back and looked at the scrapbook, and I'm like, that looks like her office. And then I could compare. I could find where the first library was, and that's where Student Financial Services is. So it's interesting to compare back and forth the different things you could see in the old photos.
That's really neat. It's one of my kind of, I don't know, favorite things is to imagine how different our, main campus buildings, Old Main and Egan Hall, how different they were over the generations from, the mid to late 1920s all the way up until present day. Most of those rooms, I think, have served many different purposes, and I appreciate you trying to document what those are. For those out there who aren't part of our Mercyhurst family of employees, Bryan has been submitting a weekly or biweekly kind of entry into our weekly newsletter that showcases a key historic moment. And it's really fascinating for all of us to learn a little bit more about the history of Mercyhurst and how many of the rooms, the traditions, the history really came to be. So it's a wonderful blessing that you've been sharing that.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. I think it's a good way for us to connect to the university as we're away.
That's awesome. Any other fun treasure finds? Anything that you were really, kind of caught off guard that you found it? It was hiding in a box. I don't know. As someone who's not an archivist, I just picture these, shelves of boxes with cool trinkets that you might open the box and go, "Ooh, look what I found."
I did find a Civil War flag and a diary from a Civil War soldier that I was not expecting to find.
Huh.
I found several old Bibles that were very interesting, some dating from the 1800s, which is not something you find in every archive, so it was definitely very interesting. But the Civil War, being a history guy, like the Civil War flag was very interesting.
That's fascinating. Do you have a long-term vision for the archives? Hopefully most are mindful that the centennial for Mercyhurst is going to be in this decade, 2026. And I think many of us who appreciate Mercyhurst want to see a big celebration of our history as part of that event. So does that play into your long-term vision? Do you have thoughts, ideas along those lines?
Yes, my long-term vision for the archives has been that the archives are not just a bunch of boxes, and it's not a box itself. It's a way of connecting the greater Mercyhurst community to the past. So my vision was to be the steward of the history by making it available online and showcasing it throughout the Mercyhurst campus. I don't only want the archives to be for a few people. I want it to be shared amongst everyone. So everyone is welcome to visit the archives, University Ridge, and learn as much as you can about it. As for the centennial, I'm really hoping that we could bring back some of the old traditions and stuff to celebrate throughout the year, maybe like a May Day celebration or stuff like that, because I think that would be really cool to celebrate the past in a more interactive way as we move forward.
That's really neat. I think that's really wonderful and a great opportunity to try and do some of those, really special things. I have a couple kind of closing questions about the archives that we can kind of get to. I assume that folks have the opportunity to access the archives regardless of where they are. They don't need to be an employee. They typically don't need a password. They don't need any of that stuff. So maybe can you, tell some of our alums who are out there listening, what's the best way to kind of stick your toe in and start to learn more about the archives?
I think the best way is to visit the website, mercyhurst.edu/archives. I think it's definitely the best way to visit. There's, like I said, we have a timeline there. We have all about the Ridge collection, all about the Mercyhurst collection. We have a featured photo of the month. We have featured collections, which we detail. I believe on the page now is Sister Carolyn Herman's collection, which you can go through the whole thing online. And the cancer research that was done at Mercyhurst, all the scrapbooks are available online. You can go through and read them. It's really a good way to see what Mercyhurst has been doing. You could read the Mercy ads from 1929 until last year. You can read every newsletter from 1960 to 2014. So there's a lot of information that you can just get online before you need to even come into the archives, which you're more than welcome to do as well.
That's fun. I think we often think of the archives as this room full of really old stuff, and it, and in some ways it is. But I think continuing the collection of archival material even today is hopefully a key part of your job as well. Is that something you find time to be able to do? Is that something that we in the campus community can help you with as well?
Definitely. I need to be able, the archives need stuff to be sent to it. I don't want to have to go out and beg everyone, oh, please send stuff to the archives. If it's of historical value, send it to the archives. I will decide whether it is or not, and we'll go from there. Right before we left campus, in January, I did a speech, like a little presentation on why archives are important to the university. And from that, I have been getting a lot of people saying, well, I have this and I want to give you that. And Intel has sent me, we really didn't have any information for Intel, and Intel plays a big part in the university. And they've sent over a vast amount of information so we could start to build a history and a collection for them. So any office, any faculty, any department that wants to start a collection to preserve their past, it's definitely something that I'm interested in. And I've also worked a lot with Pete Zohos in hospitality, as they're coming up on their, believe it's their 50th anniversary, and or 40th. I don't know. It's one of the anniversaries.
50th.
And it's 50th. And we're trying to gather, like, I have different photos and newspaper articles. I even come across a commercial for the Laker Inn back in the 70s. So that stuff will be interesting when they actually have the celebration.
That's wonderful. One of my next questions to ask was, in our office, we obviously work with our graduates and different things, and we've noticed there's a lot of significant anniversaries and reunions popping up, and I imagine you've probably been flooded in some ways with requests, maybe from our office, among others, on, hey, do you have pictures from this first team and that first class? Do you have a roster? Do you have a curriculum? All those different types of things, and I can only assume that the kind of legwork you're doing in organization really is helpful for fulfilling those requests in terms of knowing where things are.
It is massively helpful to have an organization. There's still probably not even a third of the archives is organized in a way that you can find stuff really quick. But even that small portion that has helped tremendously. I've worked with Lindsay Frank and you, of course, about doing some alumni events. I've gone through, and I think I've almost have a complete list of when every department started. I have a complete list of every sports team and when it started, so we can start to celebrate these milestones. And also, we kind of have an idea of where some of the information is, so it'll make it a little bit easier to come up with something.
That's wonderful. We got a really nice comment in the chat that I wanted to share with everybody. It was from Stephen, who's one of the most recent Ridge interns, who wanted to share two of his favorite things. He was really impressed in working with the Ridge collection to really see the breadth of Governor Ridge and the relationships he had with world leaders and U.S. presidents, hand-signed materials in the archives from those types of leaders. And so I think that's a really cool testimony of the hands-on experience, literal hands-on experience that our students are getting with the governor's materials. And then the second he chimes in that there was a handwritten greeting card to Governor Ridge from the desk of Pittsburgh Steelers founder Art Rooney Sr. And he says, as a diehard Steelers fan, that was a very significant piece of history that he was able to hold. As a big Browns fan myself, I don't find that quite as interesting, but I can certainly appreciate the historical significance of it.
I remember when he found it, because he stopped everything he was doing. He's like, look what I found. He like stared at it for 10 minutes. He was so excited. So
I can share his level of distraction. I've volunteered a few times to help with the scanning in the archives, and every time I go, I'm going through a stack of photos and I start recognizing people I know. So then I start sending myself the pictures so I can send it to them. So my productivity is not very, not as high as it should be in the archives, but I think it's just a testament to the breadth of really interesting things that are in that collection. And again, our excitement that more and more of it will be digitally available. So I can be sitting on my couch one evening browsing the collection rather than having to bother you in person each and every time I want to poke through a stack of photos.
I don't mind. Bother me away.
So we talked about this a little bit from the employee side, but I would assume that you would welcome additions to the collections from our alums, parents who might have accumulated things over the years. I assume a collection is a living, breathing thing that continue to be added to. And maybe can you talk about how they can go about that?
Yes, so any donations of historical significance are welcome. The more material we have in the archives, the better we can tell the story of Mercyhurst, which is, there are a few gaps here and there, and any gaps that we can fill is wonderful. You can go about donating something by giving me an email, sending me an email at scolvin@mercyhurst.edu. And I will let you know if it's something we have an abundance of or something that is desperately needed. And then we can go about having you mail it in or dropping it off.
That's wonderful. And anybody out there who can't remember that email address a month from now when they find something cool in their closet, you can obviously always contact the alumni office. We'll be happy to help connect you with Bryan.
Or you can visit the website and you can connect with me through there.
There's lots of ways. And we've really been blessed over the last 10 years that I've been in our office to have a really cool number of things that have been given by alums, by children as they're cleaning out their late mother's home. All these different ways that folks have acquired really neat Mercyhurst materials and been kind enough to donate them to the archives.
One of the most fascinating recent donations came from your office, and it was a paper record of Sister Carolyn Herman talking about donating to the university in the 1960s. And I was able to play the record, and I have a digital recording of it, but it's on my office computer. But it's very cool. Well,
first thing when you get back, that should definitely be sent over. So no pressure, but that's really fascinating. I'm thrilled to hear it was able to be converted. That's really awesome. So we're just about wrapping up. The last question that I love to ask our guests, I think, is maybe the hardest question of all, but you hopefully had a chance to think about it. What's your favorite part of Mercyhurst? And you can't say the archives.
Okay. My favorite part of Mercyhurst has got to be the people. Over the last 2 years, I know it's corny to say, but Hearst really has become home. Meeting some of my best friends at Mercyhurst, really becoming more involved in the community, working with the sisters, having the opportunity to work with Governor Ridge and all the administration. Like, it's just been a wonderful process. And I feel like I'm more than just an archivist. I really feel like I'm part of the history and I'm helping tell the story of the university. And it's just been a wonderful experience.
Well, that's terrific. I know I speak for a number of our colleagues, some of whom are sitting out there watching from their homes, that you've definitely become a welcomed member of our Mercyhurst family. You're out and about, you're attending functions, which I think is really good, that everybody gets to know you and knows that you're passionate about Mercyhurst history. You want to keep collecting it, and that you're a resource for everybody to turn to when we're curious about something historical. And I think that's...
Well, I don't want anybody to think that history is like it's going to bite you or something. Come to me and I will find anything that you need to. I'm a really nice guy. I'm going to try to do whatever I can. And I just hope that, the history is helping in many ways. Because I know, like, with marketing right now, it's helping in the morning buzz. It helps in many different ways people don't realize.
That's exactly it. I think we've all been able to weave history much more greatly into our daily operations, which I think is something that's really important and impactful. And I'm extremely grateful personally and on behalf of our department for your efforts in doing that. I want to close with Molly Kennedy just wrote a note in the chat that I think is really, really good. And I want to read it. She just graduated with a degree in public history. Wanted to share that when she was first introduced to the possibility of working in the archives, she waved it off, thinking it would be boring and staring at a freshly painted wall. However, upon her first interaction with Bryan, she was instantly thrilled by the wonders of the archives. He loved the creative potential in the archives and enjoyed working with various materials and projects over the past 2 years, and strongly encourages all of our attendees to stop by the archives and say hello. I certainly second that sentiment. Clearly, Bryan, you've done a wonderful job brainwashing your students and encouraging.
Well, I've tried
to speak kindly on the archives. I really appreciate all you're doing for Mercyhurst. I appreciate your willingness to take some time with us today, and look forward to being able to reconnect in person on campus once we're able, and hear more about some of the hidden treasures that you've uncovered. So, again, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
That's wonderful. So next week we will host a pair of young alums, Cole and Morgan, who will tell us a little bit about how COVID has adjusted their young work careers. Cole being in a major metropolitan city and Morgan being a young second-year teacher. They'll kind of share how their lives have just been, altered substantially because of this. So I hope you'll join us next week for that. Stay tuned to our social media sites to the website for more information on future guests. We have a couple more booked throughout June and are looking to have some in July as well. So stay tuned for more information on that. With that, we wish you the very best of health and be safe out there, and carpe diem. Take care, everybody.